to the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu.
I think she's going to be on the Worship Associate team soon. Good morning. My name is Marie Ann, and I'm your Worship Associate today. As a member of this congregation, I want to welcome you all to the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. I want to say good morning to all of the wonderful members of this church, and welcome to all the visitors that are with us this morning. Weekly announcements are sent by email with the e-blast on Fridays. If you do not have email or you're visiting here, we have paper copies on the back table so that you can pick them up after the service. There's one special announcement today. After this service, we are having lunch from the Worship Associate team. And it's a taco bar. Yay! Okay, Jonipher.
There's more for you to cheer about. I want to tell you this morning that I am extremely proud to be your minister and to be serving this congregation. Over 30 of you showed up on Wednesday afternoon for a very interesting rally and press conference, to say the least. If you missed out on that, please feel free to check it out online. But if you have ever attended any of our events, Lobby Day, if you ever sat in the auditorium, if you ever submitted a testimony, if you have ever done anything during the past 2 weeks during the special session, I invite you to please rise in body or in spirit as you're able so we can recognize you. And in case you are wondering what we did with the 85 signatures we collected here last week, here's a video that Roland had put together.
We have a petition that is going to be passed around by the ushers for you all to sign that we can deliver to the Capitol. And then some other times that you guys can show your presence at the Capitol. Monday at 8 a.m. we're asking people to come and fill the seats with supporters for the first vote from the House. On Wednesday at 10 a.m. there's going to be a rally at the Capitol. And then at 12 p.m. we'll have a rally of Christian clergy who are in support of SB1. We have the petitions going around. And while the petitions are going around, I can share my testimony.
So for close to a month now, we've had lay leaders and volunteers from Hawaii United for Marriage every Sunday morning at the services, and then at the coffee hours collecting signatures in support of marriage equality, postcards, and doing actually handwritten letters during coffee hours that have been sent to legislators. So over the course of about 4 weeks, close to 200 handwritten letters have been written and sent in the mail to representatives in support of marriage equality. So
Just
again,
from the churches alone?
Just from the churches, yeah.
Wow.
Again, to show that people of faith definitely support marriage equality, and can't wait to celebrate marriages when the bill becomes law.
There's some from the Oahu Jewish Ohana too.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that. That's great.
That's great.
Waving out of their cars, people waving lays, people waving, to us. It's really nice.
That's great. Are you planning on going inside later on?
No, because I get angry when I just sit there. So I like to be out here feeling like I'm communicating to other people. I don't like to sit and be quiet.
How do you feel whenever people yell at you like that?
I'm sad for their anger. I'm sad that equality makes some people feel threatened, and I hope that they can get over their fears and just embrace love and give equal opportunity to everyone.
Representative Mizuno, we want to present you with a petition that have been signed by various churches and religious communities throughout Hawaii. We have some here from Maui and from the Big Island, and these are people of faith who support marriage equality. And we have almost 400 signatures here, so we'd like for you to be able to present it on the floor, perhaps, and let the folks know that there is backing for marriage equality from the religious community.
Okay. I'm going to respectfully have someone else do it, and I'll
Okay,
tell you why.
sure.
As vice speaker, I have to stick to protocol.
Right, understandable.
But do know, as a strong Christian, I have evolved, and I believe that I'm going to follow Christ-like action and making sure that we don't marginalize anyone
Absolutely.
based on race, gender, or sexual orientation. It's been very difficult, and again, ultimately, my vote's gonna be what it is in third reading, and it'll probably be coming up in the next 8 hours or so. But I'm preparing myself, and this has not been easy. My family, my office, the entire community has been divided.
Yeah.
But I'll do my best to be Christ-like when I go on the floor and vote. I don't have any hate or disdain for either side. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm a strong Christian, and so I've been grappling with this myself, and it's been a very difficult issue to deal with.
Get into the auditorium today. The auditorium can hold about 180 people, and we are being divided up into the pro and the con side.
Mr. Ono?
Aye.
Mr. Onishi? Mr. Oshiro?
No.
Mr. Rhodes?
Aye.
Mr. Saiki?
Yes.
Mr. Sei? Mr. Takai?
Aye.
Mr. Takayama?
Aye.
Mr. Takumi?
Aye.
Ms. Thielen?
Aye.
Mr. Tokioka?
No.
Mr. Tsuji?
No.
Mr. Ward?
No.
Mr. Woodson? Ms. Woolley?
Aye.
Mr. Yamane?
No.
Mr. Yamashita?
Aye.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, 30 aye votes, 19 no votes, and 2 are excused.
Okay, thank you very much. Senate bill passes third reading.
And as many of you know, Representative Mizuno eventually voted yes both times. So we are very grateful for his evolution, and also for all the representatives who stood on the side of love with us. So let's give them a round of applause. I am a man, and I am a woman. I am a boy, and I am a girl. I am young, and I am old, and I am middle-aged. I am black and white, and I am yellow, red, and brown. I am married, and I am single, and I am divorced. I am heterosexual, and I am lesbian, and I am gay. I am a college graduate, and I'm a high school dropout. I am a white-collar worker and a blue-collar worker. I am retired, and I am unemployed. I am an atheist, and I am a Christian, and a humanist, and a Jew, and a mystic. I am healthy and I am ailing. I am an autistic child and I'm a policy octogenarian. I am a law-abiding citizen who has never received anything more than a parking ticket, and I am a murderer waiting on death row. I vote Republican and Democrat and Socialist Labor Party. I have voted for George McGovern and Barry Goldwater, and I have also voted for John Anderson and Gus Hall and Ted Cruz and Nancy Pelosi. I am a Marine and I am a pacifist. I am a conscientious objector and I support defense policy. I smoke and I am a non-smoker. I drink socially and I am an alcoholic. I am a vegetarian and I love a nice, thick, juicy, good steak. I really don't, by the way. I'm more of a vegetarian. But anyway, I am many other things, some by choice and some by chance. And I am a part of a common human destiny. I am a part of humanity's family. See that with more conviction. I am a Unitarian Universalist. All right. And what does it mean to be a Unitarian Universalist? If we don't have just one creed, one dogma, one common theology, or even theology, how can we claim to be a Unitarian Universalist? First of all, throughout the whole month of November, we will be talking about theology and theology. So it might be worth explaining what that means, because a couple of you have asked me, why is there an at sign instead of the place where there's usually an O sign, or an O letter? And I have to explain to people that we have to be inclusive here, because the word theology is the study of God, and theology is study of goddess. And we in this place are inclusive, and we know that we can never comprehend the divine mystery. And so whether it's male or female or both, we want to honor that. And so not only that, but we also want to honor the fact that there are theists in our congregation and there are atheists. But we all have a common desire, like the song said earlier, to cast our questions into the deep. Yeah? Isn't that why we're here? We're here to find deep meaning in our lives, and we're here on a quest for the truth, wherever the truth may be found. And so here in this place, I'd like to redefine theology as faith-seeking understanding. So how can we engage in this process together of asking questions and finding answers as a community? And indeed, oftentimes when we ask these questions, we tend to leave out the other part of our tradition. The name of our church, for example, only says the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. Kind of makes me think that the Universalist part is like the evil stepchild that we want to neglect or something, right? After all, it was founded on the idea of universal salvation. And that's where universalism came from. And most of us, when we hear the word universal salvation, we think to ourselves, what does that mean? And indeed, when we took the survey for the Building Your Own Theology and Theology class that we did this past summer, it came as no surprise that out of 18 or 19 values listed, sin and salvation ended up on the lowest end of that spectrum. And so today I'm here to ask, is there still value to universal salvation? And to what are we saving the world and the universe from? Are you ready to journey on this question and on this path along? All right? No. Well, there's the door. Feel free to go out. Although you'll be stuck by the rain, so be warned. So here's the premise of universalism. It started out with the idea that no hell exists. Because our early founders of universalism came to the conclusion that if God is a God of love, how could God allow anyone to suffer for all of eternity in this place called hell? And at the time, that was a very radical idea. This was pre-John Lennon, mind you, where he came up with the song Imagine. Imagine no hell below us, above us, and only sky, right? No heaven either. So this was the beginning, or the later part of the 18th century. It was such a radical idea because for thousands of years, Christianity has taught this whole guilt and shame factor. That somehow we need to stick a carrot in front of people. We'll call this carrot heaven. So if you belong to X, Y, or Z church, you'll get into heaven. But if you don't, and if you don't believe a certain creed or dogma, then you're going to end up with a one-way ticket to that other place called hell. Yeah? And so people get motivated by this. They want to do good work because they want to end up in heaven. And they don't want to do good work, they don't want to do bad works because they don't want to end up in that other place. And so, one day, the story goes, that Universalist preacher Hosea Ballou was riding on a horse alongside a Baptist minister. And the Baptist minister challenged Hosea Ballou and said that, you Universalists, how could you motivate your congregation to do good works in our world? What would happen, for example, if I were to push you off this horse, you would trip and fall and hurt yourself, and I would knock you down even further than that, and I would steal your wallet and all your money. What would happen then? And if I were to just leave you here to die on the roadside? And you know what Hosea Ballou responded with? He said, "My dear friend, the thought would not even occur to a Universalist to do something like that." So instead of doing good work to avoid eternal damnation in hell, we do good work just for the hell of it. Don't you like that better? And so as we can see, theology and theology matters. How we ask the question and which perspective we're coming from makes all the difference in the world. So yesterday, when we were taking a hike with Kanenuliatea, Kumu Glen Kila was talking about the way they define sin from their spiritual context. And he was saying that sin isn't necessarily just about a bunch of rules and do's and don'ts that we make up for ourselves, but sin is when you see a hungry child and refuses to feed that child. Sin is when you see a centipede without shoes and you refuse to give that centipede the shoes that they need. No one needs to ask you for help. No one needs to ask you for your kokua. But rather, it should stem from deep within inside of you to say that I want to do good work. Because that which I would describe as good work is that which unites and heals our community, and that which unites and heals our world. And bad acts, in my opinion, are those things which divide us, those things which cause us to be destructive and destroys relationships. And nowhere was that more evident for me than on Wednesday at noon, where we were holding our press conference, trying to unite the community in favor of love and saying that we are standing on the side of love. And yet, here's our opponents using catchphrases like, "Let the people decide," to divide our community even further, and to put out misinformation and untruth out there, to destroy the community of love and aloha that we have built in this state. So for me, it's pretty clear what good and bad is. And yet at the same time, I question even my own assumptions. Because according to a universalist theology and according to universal salvation, none of us are truly free and liberated, and none of us are truly saved until all of us are saved. And it also means that we cannot even put people into categories like good or bad, or even ugly. That we are all the recipient of the sunlight. Here's what Forrest Church had to say about this. He says, I don't believe, okay, let me go back actually. In saying that even the notions of heaven and hell, I don't even know if I believe in that, other than it being a state of mind and a state of being that we're at. And here's why I don't believe in the notion of hell. According to First Church, he says, I don't disbelieve in an afterlife. I simply have yet to experience an afterlife, and therefore have little to say concerning one. All I know is this. First, nothing, including any imaginable afterlife, could be more amazing than life itself. Second, life as we know it is impossible without death, because death is very much a part of life, as we know, right? And finally, though theology may begin at the tomb's door, that the specter of death prompts reflection of what life means, surely no revelation is more compelling and worth pondering than that of a newborn child emerging from its mother's womb. If awe and humility are universalism's handmaidens, beyond every other distinction, birth, love, and death remain the sacraments that unite us in a shared, all-saving mystery. Don't you just love that? Can I get an amen? Amen. That birth, life, and death are the only sacraments worth talking about in a universalist kind of theology. And so I'm reminded of another notion, and when I was at Plum Village, in Thich Nhat Hanh's village, we used to sing a song called No Discrimination. And it goes something like, the sun, it shines on everyone, and then we would actually wag our finger on each other and say, no discrimination, no discrimination. And then we'd say, the rain that falls on everyone, no discrimination, right? And so it's kind of a way for us to, we should have chanted that on Wednesday. Marriage, it is for everyone, no discrimination, right? But as easy as it is for me to think that, I also think back about what Forrest Church has to say about this. He says that in its original expression as a development within Christian theology, universalism advanced the radical notion that all of God's children go to heaven. Interpreted more broadly, universalism is an inclusive faith, rejecting the divisive notion that people fit into two separate categories, sheep and goats, the saved and the damned. And on Friday, what happened at the state capitol was they actually drew a line. So there was a line in the sand. It was made of a tape, and we divided up the opposition into the Mackay side of the rotunda, and the proponents of marriage equality were on the Mauka side. And there was a stanchion that divided us even further to say that y'all are on this side, y'all and the rest are on this side. And yet I question our political process these days and the kind of polarized world that we live in. Because what if you were truly undecided on the issue and you just wanted to go into the auditorium to observe what both sides had to say? Which line would you fall under? And which side would you be on? And the other thing that came to my mind about this whole no discrimination idea is their side began singing things like, this land is my land, this land is your land, or America the Beautiful. And our side started singing it as well. And it was our side, actually, that even brought up the whole Amazing Grace song. We started singing it, so the women's chorus and the gay men's chorus started singing it. And they started singing it. Their side started singing Hawaii Aloha. Our side started singing Hawaii Aloha. In fact, at the very end, as a celebration and as a way to end the night's events, the group erupted into Hawaii Aloha. And so which side truly possesses the truth? And I think to myself, I need to show more compassion towards our opponents. That though I have fundamental disagreements with them, they too are deserving to live on this world. The sun too shines on them, and the rain too falls on them. So I'm really wagging that finger at me. No discrimination, no discrimination, right? And I tell you what, it was so difficult, and my partner could attest to this, as we were going through amendment after amendment, being introduced by a self-loathing lesbian, not that I have any judgments or anything, on the floor in order to just delay the proceedings. And I had to think hard and empathize with her and say, gosh, I know what it's like to suffer from this sting of internalized homophobia. I too have been taught by my society about the sin of homophobia and what that's like to hate yourself and to hate the fact that you love someone of the same gender. It's very hard. And the other thing I had to really resist, the other temptation to evil I had to resist, is to judge her for choosing power over ethics and morality and her convictions, and to just sell out her community like that. It's no wonder, I don't know how many of you have read Dante, but he says that the lowest rungs of hell are reserved for those who commit treason. So it's for treachery, it's for traitors, right? And so rather than me going to that place of saying that she's going to be condemned to hell for all of eternity, a hell that I don't believe in, that perhaps if we're all going to end up in the same place and end up in heaven anyway, I might as well accept her now and be friends with her and forgive her and come up with a way that all our communities can heal with one another. Tough thing, this universal salvation. Yeah? And yet, at the same time, we know that we are called to do that tough work in our world. Because without it, none of us, not a single person here can be saved. So, here's another concept that I'd like to leave you with. And that's the idea that ultimately what we believe in is that love will win. I know sometimes it'll take a while. Again, the arc of the moral universe is long, but we gotta believe that there is hope, that love will eventually win. And indeed, this is how other universalists come about. Because believe it or not, we are not the only universalists. So we can't even claim universalism with a capital U. There are also other Christian universalists that are just recently being transformed and converted into a more universalist way of thinking. And one such person is a minister by the name of Rob Bell, who wrote a book called Love Wins. And how he came to this conclusion is that he was looking at people like Gandhi, and he was thinking, he's led such a moral life, and Gandhi's whole philosophy around nonviolence is based off of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So Gandhi was a universalist Hindu, shall we say. And he couldn't send Gandhi to hell. And so he thought, well, if Gandhi can't go to hell, then who else have I been sending to hell that is probably not going to end up there? Perhaps the LGBT community? Perhaps other folks that I have characterized to be evil. And you know when I came to this realization is when we were having our press conference and this mob started interrupting our conference and wanted to take over the mic. Remember that moment, those of you who were there? It's a very tense moment. And many of us were fearful. We were literally singing for our lives. Yeah? And one clergy just started singing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And we all joined in, and we all held hands, and we all shielded and protected one another from the fear instead of the grace that was abounding in that place. And the more we sang, the more our opponents became angry. One person, she shouted at me, "Seriously? Really? You're singing the song?" But I must be thinking, I believe that what is really going on in her head is this does not compute. I can't process this. I'm confused. You people, according to my pastor, are the evil ones. Why are you singing Amazing Grace, a song we sing at our church as well? What is going on here? That's when transformation happened for me, I think. And that's what I think made them eventually back down instead of the sheriff coming in and hauling them away. But, I could have my story too, yeah? So I'd like to think that universal salvation is the idea that we can't just separate ourselves from one another, and that universal means all of us, inclusive of everybody, are in this together. And let me just end with another image that comes to mind whenever we talk about universalism. And this is the one that was adopted by the Universalists back in the early part of the 20th century. As you can tell, the cross is less prominent than it usually is. For Christian churches, it's a big old cross. You can't miss it, yeah? But for Universalists, it's a tiny part, and it's off-center. So you'll notice that the cross isn't even on the center of the circle. It's to say that Christianity is just one religion among many in our world. And that the Christian Universalists may claim that. But my other friend, let me just tell you another story about my friend, the Reverend Earl Ikeda. Some of you might have met him. He came to our worship service during Easter last year. He's the minister at the Hongbang Pogaji in Mo'iliili, which is a Buddhist temple. And when we talked together, he said, Unitarian Universalists, I think I prefer the Universalist part. Because I feel that what we're trying to do here as Buddhists is Universalist. Because we're trying to blur the distinction between you and me. And when we show loving kindness, it's may I be filled with loving kindness, but also may you be filled, and may we be filled with loving kindness. Again, we have no discrimination because we can't even be attached to ourselves, let alone to these ideas of right or wrong. And so that was an eye-opener for me, that we all could be hyphenated Universalists. And so as we go forth from here, I invite you to think about what else our world needs saving from. Other than homophobia, which we're already working on, how about the fact that the Star Advertiser came out with a statistic just a couple weeks ago that showed that Honolulu is the 8th richest city in our country right now. Why is it that poverty still exists in Honolulu? That, to me, is a sin that we need to be saved from. And you want to know what else is a sin that we need to be saved from? This thing called climate change that has caused so much destruction in our world. We can't do it alone. We need universal salvation from environmental disasters. Amen? And we need to be saved from any kind of oppression or discrimination that may still lie out there. And indeed, this is what the forebears of universalism have found out for themselves. It was the Universalists who partnered with the Quakers back in the late 18th century to say that it is not okay to own African Americans or anybody else as slaves. And it was they who ordained the first woman in 1863 because they thought that women had as much a calling into ministry as men does. It was the Universalists who founded the World Parliament of Religions because they wanted to make sure that there is peace in our world. And unless there is peace amongst the world's religions, there can never be peace in our world. And did you just hear our budding theologians here talk about what peace means to them? No more fighting. It's that simple, folks. That's what's going to save us. We need to meditate and sleep more. That's what's going to save us. Can I get an amen to that? So I say that today there is still a need for universal salvation. That we still need to be the ones that are acting out there to liberate our thinking, to liberate our hearts, and to liberate ourselves from the bondage of hatred and fear and ignorance. May it be so.